Folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Michael McDonald with another episode of Veterans in Politics. Today, our guest is going to be David Kelch, discussing corruption in his book, See Something, Say Something. But before we get to Mr. Kelch, Mike, any rants?
You know what? Today's been kind of a crazy day. So the weather's coming out after sprinkling for a little bit. But I when I first saw his book, See Something, Say Something, I was thinking, is that like a terrorist thing? You see those signs everywhere at the casinos. And I was like, is this a terrorist operation or something? And then I got to talk to David here, and he went a little bit through. So I'm excited to hear his story and see what he has to tell us and expose what's going on. So
this program was brought to you by Ron Quince, who is a congressional candidate for District Number 1, and Stephanie Phillips, who's running for United States Senate. Mr. Kelch, tell us, thank you for coming on the show.
Appreciate it.
Where are you hailing from? Where are you coming from?
Santa Barbara, California.
Santa Barbara. How was the drive?
I didn't come all the way from there. I came from Bishop. I live up in Bishop now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was originally born there. I'm a fourth generation there. My kids were born there.
Well, tell us about yourself.
Well, I was a carpenter. I went to work and started when I was 15 years old. Got married when I was real young. Had 6 kids. I had raised also 2 foster children and built multi-million-dollar homes. Big homes in Montecito.
All right.
Decided to quit and came up here, went up to June Lake, California. I stayed there for 11 years. And the wife wanted to, get a little place of our own somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And I went and bought a piece of property, and it was a landlocked piece of property down by New Cuyama in Santa Barbara County. And then trouble started.
how old were you when the trouble started?
60.
60? And how old are you today?
I'm going to be 93 in 2 days.
Happy
birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do a lot of stuff, but the wife, I believed in karma, and we didn't write a book. We didn't do anything. And then it's hard because, and I still live this, and I've been living it all this time. But I can almost say that they ended up by killing my wife earlier, and she should have died.
What did your wife die of?
A broken heart, and she had that post-traumatic syndrome. When she came out of jail,
Your wife
which I still have.
Where was your wife locked up?
4 months.
Why?
And why? I couldn't tell you. She'd never done nothing. She took one hell of a beating by the police, but she never did nothing.
How old was she?
She was, at that time, she was just 59.
What do you mean the police? The police beat her?
Oh, gosh, yes.
All right. Let's do this. So that way so the viewers and listeners won't get confused. So you wrote this book.
Right.
See Something, Say Something. That's on Amazon, right?
Yes.
Okay. What inspired you to write this?
It just kept, I'm going to say it this way, it just kept gnawing on me. And I began to think, I'm going to write this book and get it out. And in the book, in the back, when you get in the back, you're going to see all the people that were involved in this. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, there's 36 of them? But the sheriff's department, I mean to tell you, there was a lot of people involved in this.
Okay. What is this book about? First of all,
it's about the corruption of the sheriff's department and the federal government and the crooked judicial system, period.
This story made the news a while back too, right? I think I remember reading an article about some of the stuff.
I couldn't tell you one way or the other because I don't follow that at all.
Well, tell us about this journey that inspired you to sit down and put pen to paper.
Well, it's like what you have there. This inspired me to do this because I think they should be exposed. And if I could have went to court, I had 19 witnesses who were going to come in on my side if we went to court on a trial. They couldn't let it happen, so this is how this whole mess really turned upside down. And I'm going to just jump ahead just a pinch here. I had to get my wife close enough to where I could talk to her, and I had one officer that allowed to do that, but they were scared to death they were going to get fired. And I told the wife...
What's the wife's name?
Bonnie Kelch.
Okay.
And she was 59 years old, and she took a severe beating. Excuse me? By an officer named Daniel Osuna. I gotta stop a minute.
At 15 years old. That's police brutality at its worst.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
No, you're doing.
Take your time.
And it's the big shame is we were threatened by police in uniform to be killed if we did certain things and
What are these certain
paid
things?
no attention,
What are these certain things? And what cops are we talking about? What state?
It happened in Santa Barbara County in California.
Okay. And why were these officers called to the scene in the first place?
What we did is after we saw everything that was happening, but I'm saying the right thing. When we saw all this stuff, drug trafficking by the police, and what was going on, the whole works.
So the police were drug trafficking.
Oh, yes.
How were they doing this? What kind of drugs?
Just marijuana.
Okay.
But at the house where this operation was, they were selling hard drugs too.
Okay.
I couldn't even tell you names of it. I've never done any drugs in my life. And I just...
Did you take photos of these police officers drug trafficking?
I've got documents, and I think you have... one of them I think you have right there.
You're talking about this?
That's all my information right here.
Right.
I've got all these boxes of information that against the police, photographs, and everything else. I do not have this with me anymore. I took it out of California and I've got it hid. I couldn't take the chance they were going to come and get it. So all this stuff right now is outside of California.
Okay.
If it has to be produced, it can be done real easy.
So tell me why the police were called to the scene? The same day your wife was beaten by them.
We got up in the morning and we left the house early because I had an appointment in court in Santa Maria, California. And that was in Santa Barbara County. And I got up, and the wife and I and my daughter and her two boys, 1 5 and 1 9, we went to court in Santa Maria because I was getting ready to go on a trial, have a trial. And
what was the trial for?
For stealing our own bull.
A bull, B-U-L-L?
Yes. The bull was given to me by my wife's uncle.
So you lived on a farm at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
And the minute we were arrested and we were going to trial, that's when the police was really getting wound up. The sheriff's department. Head Sheriff Thomas, he was getting ready for re-election in Santa Barbara County as the head sheriff. So everything was kind of kosher until I filed a complaint with Internal Affairs. in Santa Barbara with Glenn Monks. All I can tell you is after that happened, within 2 days, then the wife and I were threatened by sheriffs in uniform that we signed that complaint, we'll kill you. At that point, everything went downhill in a hurry. And we were going to go to trial on stealing the bull, and we were set up with marijuana. And it ended up, when we got home that late that afternoon, there was 9 sheriffs standing on our property. We drove up to the front gate. 5 of them were standing there pointing their rifles right at them. I can say their name just like it happened yesterday. Oh, everything in the book that this book has got in it is true. True names, true people, true everything. And what we went through and thrown in jail and beaten at our front gate was merciful.
So you were beaten too?
Oh, man, was I beaten.
What was the police operation close to your ranch or your house out there in Bishop? Or?
There was only 2 officers in that little town where I lived. And I'm going to just come right out and tell you, one of them was called Webb Bernhardt. He was a drug dealer. The other one was called James Krupa. He was a child molester. But they knew what each one was doing and what was going on, and nobody did anything.
And James Krupa was the sheriff at the time.
That's right. They were both sheriffs, both of them. And what really is sickening about it is to drive up to your front gate and have 5 people pointing there, 5 sheriffs pointing a gun through the doggone windshield.
Why were they there to begin with?
Because they made out false charges against us that we had all these guns and we were violent people. And all this went on and on and on. The strangest thing is when we bought the property, we met the original sheriff there. And he told us, why did you buy property out here in the middle of all these marijuana growers? We didn't know. And
At
then,
the time, marijuana was illegal?
oh, yes.
This is back in, what, 1990 or
90, yes. And you know, it's amazing that the police knew, but these people were sharing some of their drugs with the police and they never arrested them. And what turned around and happened is they would make out reports and they would sign them just to keep from going to jail. And all these reports they made out about the wife and I there was no truth in it. The very worst of it all was this woman named Deborah Linden wrote a report to the federal government. So the federal government came out and they seized the property with 9 sheriffs. And that's when we took a severe beating. I was beaten 3 times the same day.
Why? Did you resist arrest?
No.
Did you assault the police officers?
No.
They just decided just to beat you?
That's it.
Well, they had a search warrant, right?
No search warrant.
And because they're the bull situation, is that what?
This one here was
looking for the bull inside of his kitchen.
Yeah, the bull.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something that the bull. And when you read the book, you've got to read what's under each one of the pictures in it. You're going to find out that the bull belonged to my wife's uncle, and his name was, John Belt Jameson. And yet they wrote a report out, and it was said that we wrote this lying and forged this stuff, and it said John Belt Edgar. There was nothing. His name wasn't Edgar, it was Jameson. There's a picture in the book of him and his wife on their anniversary. And we came to the doggone jail in Santa Maria when we went in the same day, when we got beat up and everything else, we were thrown in jail and the whole 9 yards. At the front gate, the beating we took there, now I took a beating from 3 officers and they kicked me in the head 6 times.
Who did they hit you with?
They're combat boots.
No, the beating. Was it batons? Was it open hands?
They're boots. They kicked me
just kicked
with
you.
their combat boots. And they were bulletproof jackets on and rifles pointing at us. And I told the wife then, I told her I love you, and I knew we were going to get killed. The only thing that stopped them, there was 4 grandchildren there screaming and hollering and crying. And I walked right past the police. They pulled a gun on you, and I just looked at them and said, go ahead and shoot. You've been trying to kill us for the last 2 months. Go ahead and kill. You know, why? Didn't say a word to them.
How old are you? How old were you at the time?
60. And well, in the book, you can see it pretty simple because they wouldn't allow pictures to be taken or nothing else. And I had one of my daughters sneaked in with a little throwaway camera and took 4 pictures of me.
Did they arrest you that day?
They arrested us and
charge?
threw us in jail with no bail for 4 months.
What was the charge?
Assaulting officers with a firearm. And I never had a gun. Nobody had a gun. And there was one federal man, and to this day, I can't tell you why he was screaming at him. And he kept screaming at the police officers, kill him, we're way out here. Nobody will know about it. It was too many grandchildren and also a couple of other witnesses. One daughter and her girlfriend were there, and they saw the whole thing. They accused me of assaulting him with a rod. I have a picture of it. It's a hydraulic jack handle, 10 inches long. I went after a man by the name of Daniel Osuna that was kicking my wife and said, you'll never sign a complaint against one of us again. It all started with him walking up to the side of my truck, my pickup truck, and the window was down, and he asked me my name. And I just said that I can't talk to you. I was told by my attorney not to talk to anybody. I said, so I got an attorney. You go talk to my attorney. And that was it. First thing I know, he grabbed my left arm and he jerked it out the window and bent it down over the side of the window. And if I hadn't grabbed the steering wheel and raised it up, he'd have broke it. Fortunately, I was strong enough, and he had a hold of it, and I pulled real hard and slammed him against the side of the truck. And then I jumped right out immediately. And because at that time, the grandkids were in the back, and they were screaming and crying and hollering.
You filed charges against these officers?
Yep, 14 of them. When we got out of jail, we filed charges against 14 of these police officers. And I went to every superior court judge in Santa Barbara, 9 of them. The names are in the book. And when I went in there, each one of them disqualified themselves because they knew the officer. That's how they disqualified themselves. As they disqualified themselves, they would throw them off the case. And fortunately, it went like that, clear up to finally got to the head Sheriff Thomas. And he was the last one that the judges threw him off the case. And I had 14 sheriffs and never got to do anything.
Did you contact the FBI or the U.S. Justice or Attorney Generals or?
I contacted. I got to look at this right here if I have it.
Who made up the story about the bull? Is it this one guy that wanted the bull or something like that? And
no.
Or they made it up to come as an excuse to come on your property because you're so close to the operation?
They came when it really started to know we were getting in a little trouble. And it wasn't even about the bull. Somebody, where we lived, we were on a landlocked piece of property. The closest people to us was 2.5 miles away.
You had some good old boy sheriffs.
Yeah, and they, the thing that was crazy, he said he took pictures of it. But then when he got him in court and they started questioning him, they found out that the doggone pictures that was taken wasn't even taken by him. It was taken by a friend. And I'm almost sure they took the pictures when the sheriffs came out on the property with this owner, and they came and walked up on the hill and they looked at the bull and they had this picture, and he says, well, it looks like it. And they tried to load the bull into a horse trailer. The bull didn't want to get in the horse trailer, and he ended up horning Krupa by near his butt or something. And anyway, Krupa went down on the ground and the bull ran off. And I said, well, that's a smart move. I says, now he's running down here where all the grandchildren are. And we had quite a few grandchildren that came out on the ranch and stayed out there. And I walked down there and I just talked to him, and his name was Mr. Belvedere. And I talked to him, and he just followed me right back up the road, back up to where I had him in the doggone gated area up there in the pasture.
And
the main sheriff guy that was there, Honeycutt, he said, boy, it looks to me like this is your bull.
Yeah, he's coming right to it.
Yeah.
So when did the incident where they found 40 plants or something like that, was that after this one? They came after you again? Or?
Okay, well, in the book, there's a picture of the hothouse. It was in a hothouse, and the hothouse was 4 feet wide, a little bit wider than the stable, probably here, 4 feet, 10 feet long. That's all the bigger it was. Had glass around it, and there was nothing in it. And we went to court to sign the complaint, and they came out on the ranch with a search warrant that wasn't even signed by a judge. It's got no date or anything in it. It's in the book. And they came on the ranch when we weren't there, and they put marijuana plants in there. And they said I had 43 marijuana plants, 1.5 to 2 foot tall.
You saying the cops framed you?
Yeah. Yes, without a doubt. You'll also see in there that there's another guy that almost got framed, and he's got a declaration, and I put it in the book, and you see that the officers they couldn't have got any more crooked than they were, because it wasn't much after all those plants that we saw a police car, pickup truck, backed up to an airplane that was running on an easement road. We had a 4-mile easement road we had to drive on. And they were down there, and they were putting packages in the back of this. And then we found out later that they also put them in semis, and the semis would drive from there on Highway 166 over to Interstate 5 and over Interstate 5 down to the Grapevine. And they'd go into a truck stop that was down the road a ways, and then they'd lift the hood up on it, and here would come a white pickup truck with tool racks on the side and boxes, and pull up right alongside the truck, and they'd unload the drugs from that into the doggone pickup truck right in the middle of daytime. And I watched it all happen through the field glass, and I said, well, it's a piece of cake. They say they can't. Nobody cares. They think they're over there repairing the truck. They were doing nothing to it.
So was any of these cops convicted? What was the outcome of the court case?
One. What happened was, after they put us in jail, when they beat us, severely beat all of us right there, they beat the wife and everything else. And that's another subject too, how they treated her while she was in jail, and then that led to her demise. And
how old was she?
She was 59, and they never got a mark on them. If you would have saw what they would have done And people did see it, and the kids were screaming and everything else. When they went to court and testified, they never said nothing about 4 grandchildren between 5 and 9 years old. And it was really hard to believe that that could happen. We're in jail, and they didn't put us on trial or try anything. And our attorneys told us that their excuse was, you dug too deep and there's nothing we can do for you. And that's exactly what they did.
What does that mean, you dug too deep?
We looked into the drug organization of the police department, and we knew what was going on, and that's when we went to Internal Affairs in Santa Barbara and filed a complaint. And Internal Affairs told the ones that were doing it, and they came back to us and told us they were going to kill us. And the thing just kept boiling. And then the closest man to us, he only come out on his ranch every weekend with some friends, and they'd shoot around there and everything else. And I ended up losing 2 of my horses. They shot and killed 2 of my horses, and the police would do nothing. They just said it didn't warrant an officer. It got to the point where you didn't know what they were going to do. And what they ended up doing was they couldn't find all that evidence we had. They couldn't find it on the ranch because I had it buried. And they came back on the ranch, and they burned down my wife and our home after 40 years of marriage, everything we had. They stole it all, and then they burned the home down. They also burned down my daughter's home at the same time.
And they got away with all this?
Of course.
Was there like an arson report or anything like that? They say what the cause was?
They had
back in what, 1990 or 19?
Yeah, it was in 1990. Yeah, they had
they did have insurance fraud. They did have arson investigators.
They did. They brought in a man by the name of and I'm looking here in some paperwork, and
the same time that the bull incident happened. That's when they saw they charged you marijuana. They planted the marijuana, or that
they
was that
just,
separate.
They just put it in there, and the strange thing about it, it was no marijuana in it, and they said they took pictures of it, which I never saw, and they said that this Deborah Linden, she's the one that wrote the story to the federal government, and she made out there was all this marijuana. But the thing that I was just going to tell you who was, they came out when the homes were burnt, so we don't skip too far there, that this guy his name was Jim Allen, and he was a state fire investigator, arson and bomb squad for California. He came on the ranch. He investigated the fires, and he came up with the same conclusion that George Lopez of the head fire department. And that's a little tricky thing they were doing with George Lopez. But anyway, George Lopez ended up, same report. I've got all the reports. I've got it all. There's nothing I can't bring forward, or whatever I've said or what I'm going to say. Yeah, I've got it all.
It sounds like a modern day story of Job, Steve. Like they lost their whole ranch, all their farm animals, their houses get burned, and all because of the system.
Everything, pigs and sheep and chickens and horses and cows, and everything went, and everything we owned went. But when they went out there, they came and Webb Bernhardt and this Deborah Linden, I got to tell you a quick little story. Webb Bernhardt was a man that was having an affair with a woman that owned the ranch in front of me, 2.5 miles away. And her home was about a half a mile from the gate.
The sheriff was having an affair.
Right. Webb was, right. And so she gave him a key. So he had this key to get through that front gate. From that front gate to our front gate was almost 2 miles. And they came out there the year before, in 89, they came out there. And they came on the property. And to get the bull, and the thing that was crazy is I had a water tank that I mounted on a small building about 7 feet tall. So I had down water pressure because I was up on top of the hill, and I was going to build a home up there. And there's pictures in the book of it, but it shows what these people can do, which is nuttier than hell. They came out there and they picked that building, the siding off of it and everything else. And I had foundation vents on it because I didn't have any electricity. I had solar panels. And that was the solar battery house is what I called it. And I put vents in the building, and there were foundation vents. They went out there and said it was a bunker so I could shoot people that tried to get on the ranch. It was no more than, well, this is the stories they made up, and that all that stuff was turned over to the federal government. When the federal government came in, that's when stuff really went crazy. And that's when we took this severe beating and thrown in jail with no bail and all that stuff. And I supposedly attacked them, and I didn't attack anybody.
The FBI got involved because of the drugs or the marijuana?
It was the drugs, and we had 30 or 40 guns in our home. Never had 30 or 40 guns. My guns were stolen in Ojai, California, when I was over there building a house for a man by the name of Denny Lord. And I, between the wife and I, and the wife deer hunted, and we went, dove hunting and hunt sage hen and everything else up here. Between us both, I think maybe we had 6 guns, but they said we had 30 or 40. That's why the mob of police came with flak jackets and all this stuff, and they said we had this bunker and we had this and that. We didn't have that.
You're allowed to have as many guns as you want, right? I don't think Is there a restriction in California?
And the crazy part of it all is you've got, we never hit anybody. We never cussed at anybody. We just told them we're not talking. You can talk to an attorney, and they just severely beat us. They all got in on it.
Well, you got 10 chapters in this book.
I know it.
Could you give us a brief synopsis of these chapters? Let's go with chapter 1, the beginning.
It's just something about the kids, the grandkids, and that was my working men that helped me on the ranch to put up the barbed wire fence all the way around it. Okay. And they helped me put in water pipes. And there is some pictures you can see in the book where little guys that are 5 years old with a shovel shoveling dirt back in the ditches and stuff. That's what they did. And it was, and that's a little bit of insight of what we did and made a family project out of it.
In chapter 2, it's all about the drugs.
The chapter 2 is the start of it. Mm-hmm. Yes. And then once it gets to chapter 3, that's when everything got locked down.
And that's the trouble with the neighbors.
Yeah, the trouble with the neighbors, right.
But the neighbors are like 2 miles away.
Yeah.
How you have trouble with them?
I had to drive on their property.
To get to their property?
To get to my property. I had to go in.
How was that?
No easement or nothing?
Yeah, easement. Had an easement. Yes. Yeah. And drove on that property. And it had a gate, and I wanted them to put one lock on it. And that way, anybody that came through it had the right to come through onto the property and come and see us. Mm-hmm. But he wouldn't do that. They had all these different locks, and I think that had a lot to do with the sheriffs. It ended up that this Webb Bernhardt, what he ended up doing is he had a key to go that through to see this woman, and then she turned around and sold the property to another man, and then they lost the property, and even the people even lost their son, and they never did anything about it. But anyhow, they ended up and they sold it to a man by the name of Spurlock. And the first thing he did is put a sign on the front gate, and it said, trespassing can be hazardous to your health, is what he put out there. But they never changed the locks and never did anything. And then Webb Bernhardt, when he came in on the property to get the bull with the owner and all that, and they came and they literally took the bull. But they also went in my house and they took my keys to my locks. Now they had my keys to my house and my keys, and I had a padlock on a hasp on the outside door to get in the house. And him and Deborah Linden are the ones that were in the house. You knew they had the key, and then within about 3 months, when the houses were burned, they couldn't find this. When they couldn't find this,
Well,
they burned the homes.
Let's pop over to chapter 4. Corruption rears its ugly head.
Yeah, that's the corruption of the police. It really came. It really opened up, because that's when we saw the airplane, and we saw them loading stuff into the airplane. And an airplane used to fly back over my property, and it didn't have no numbers on it, and he'd drop a black bag right on Webb Bernhardt's ranch he had. And he bought that ranch. You can imagine what went down when he bought that ranch.
Chapter 5, the complaints, our false arrests, and the illegal search warrant.
Right. They had no search warrant. They came on the property, and we had gone to court that morning, and when they come back, that's when we took the beating, the wife and I and my daughter.
Well, chapter 6 talks about the beating. You want to tell us a little about that?
That's...
Did you guys go to the hospital? Were the paramedics called?
Yes. Yeah, I went to Santa Maria Medical Center, and there in Santa Maria, the police took me there. I was beaten 3 times that day. Once at the front gate, once when I walked into the police station, handcuffed and shackled, and Ross Ruth was walking in back of me, and he says, I should have killed you when I had the chance.
Only a coward would beat somebody that's shackled or handcuffed.
Oh, yeah. Well, they did, and there was 5 officers just standing there watching it all. I walked in the back door of the Santa Maria Sheriff's Station, and that's what he said to me. He says, I should have killed you when I had a chance.
Did you contacted the ACLU?
Yeah. Yes.
American Civil Liberties Union?
Union? Oh, yeah. I've got some paperwork here. I can show you everybody I contacted. Every single one of them.
Okay. Like, who did you contact? And what was the verdict?
It was...
Did you file any 1983s on these people, like civil rights complaints?
I'm going to tell you what happened to Krupa, just to let you know. And you keep saying about, did I file this and file? I went into court on the fire. I call it the fire case. I went into court and I subpoenaed Krupa.
Who's that?
That was the other officer that was in Cuyama. Only 2 officers, Webb Bernhardt and James Krupa. And they took care of a pretty big area. And they always wore their uniforms. When one was off duty, the other guy had his uniforms on in case he needed help, or something. And so they were always wore uniforms. That deal, they were seen carrying stuff into the hothouse, which they set us up with this marijuana. And they were, I've got depositions and I've got declarations and I've got everything a person could have but I never had the chance to bring it into court because they never would put us on trial. But this thing about Krupa, Mom and I got to a point, my wife, Bonnie, and we wanted to find out what the town people knew. And I went into town, and there was a kind of a small article written, and I wanted to put it in the newspaper, the Cuyama newspaper. And they wouldn't take money, and they wouldn't put it in the paper. And all it was asking if anybody had any trouble with these two officers that were in that town of Cuyama.
What about Chapter 7, held in custody, no bail, no trial, 3 months, 28 days.
Right.
This is for assaulting an officer and for the drug charges. And
all that. The whole works. They tied all the cases together.
Any charges stick?
They didn't. None of. They never said anything about anything that I have. The information I have never got back into court.
Were you found guilty of anything?
Did you take a deal or?
No, I took a deal.
What was the deal?
I pled no contest to the charges.
Why'd you do that?
And I did that because my wife's father was dying of Alzheimer's, and my daughter was dying of breast cancer, my oldest daughter.
Sorry.
And I told my wife, if we don't get out of jail, we're not going to see them. And so we pled no contest under the People versus West Act, and that way we could sue them. And
Who's your lawyer?
We really had a good lawyer. This lawyer that we had, the first one we had was, he was an attorney, a judge, and he smoked a little pot, and they found out about it and threw him off the bench. But I'm telling you.
And now all these lawyers and judges are probably owners and dispensaries.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
And if you would have took it to trial.
And those cops.
and they wouldn't put us on trial. And all I needed was a lousy $5 to $10 grand, and he would have went to trial for us. I didn't have the money. I didn't have any money.
Did you waive your right to speedy trial? Because they keep you in for 3 months with no bill.
Nothing like that. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And it ended up, we went out, we got out of jail, and I'm telling you.
And pretrial detention is so rampant in our society right now. They'll keep you in there indefinitely, and your Eighth Amendment right to bail is and against cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, they throw a man in jail, no bail, and to keep you there to weaken them to just do whatever you want. So the prosecutor gets a 99% conviction rate, so that they can go and make sure that people plea it out. And if you take it to trial, your chances on trial are you get
nothing.
You have no chance of even winning, even if you're innocent.
What I'm wondering is when you have all this evidence and they won't do anything, even the DAs, they were crookeder than. But I was always under the impression that with the amount of money the sheriffs were getting, and that crop of stuff that they had was there for 11 years, and the federal government finally raided it 11 years later, and they estimated this was worth $45 million a year. And when you think about it, you're going, well, where did all this money go? And they always say, follow the trail of the money. You find out real quick what's going on. And that's more or less the way I thought about it. You had asked me about how many other people I had talked to, and
did you get medical care while you were there? So your head was bleeding.
No,
they for 3 months.
They didn't do anything.
So there's no
my eyes finally opened up 11 days later. I really took a beating. I'm going to tell you, I've never been beat like that in my life.
And your wife too, was she thrown in jail as well?
She was thrown right in jail, and she did
no
absolutely nothing.
Were there female officers on the scene?
One, Deborah Linden.
How about chapter 8, Our Time in Hell? Tell us a little bit about that.
Wait a minute. Repeat that, please.
Chapter 8, Our Time in Hell, parentheses, jail.
It's been quite a while. The wife was
your experience while you were in jail. You and your wife,
well. I'll tell you what my wife ended up happening with her. The doggone women correctional officers taking care of them in jail. They were drunks, and they were drunks. They come to work drunk. Yeah, and this is what my wife told me, and she said that they were taking bets when she was going to die, and my wife was taking medication, and the medication she was taking, they wouldn't give it to her, and then they went and told her that I tried to escape, and they shot and killed me, and this is what the police officers that were taking care of them told her. But
and they got you because they thought they pulled guns on you. You had no guns on you. Or anything.
No guns.
And you guys got assaulted, handcuffed, and beaten.
No guns.
And then dragged off to jail and charged with resisting or assault on an officer.
Yeah, you will see. Yeah, you will see.
Your Constitution was severely violated.
Oh, they didn't even have a search warrant to be there.
There's no federal lawsuits against these.
And they're 60 years old. Like, come on, they're in their prime. Their prime. They're just trying to mind their own business on their farm. And these cops come over here.
And the thing that really, really upset me was the fact that the wife did nothing but get out of the car. Next thing I knew, she was on the ground in front of the car, and Danielson was kicking the hell out of her. And I grabbed a piece of what you're looking at there. This is the bunker.
Yeah, it's
right
the bunker that they planted the weed on. They planted the 40-something plants on there, huh?
Yeah. Oh my.
How about chapter 9? Terms of our release, the loss of our loved ones, and almost our lives.
That's when we bailed out, and we pled to false charges to get out. And it just states in there, when my wife's father died, within less than 6 weeks, he was dead. And then I'm sorry.
No bill. It is sitting there in jail.
Wow. Have you sought any type of counseling?
None.
How long was it that your wife passed away after this incident too? Sorry, I know that's sorry.
I was.
There you go.
60 years old, being thrown in jail for months.
I'm sorry.
No, take your time.
Oh, that's okay.
Take your time.
The father-in-law died, and then my daughter died, and she was only 38 years old.
Oh boy. Our condolences.
And I was holding her in my arms.
Sorry.
And she died January 9th. And she died of breast cancer.
Your daughter.
My daughter. We got out of jail and she died 2.5 months later.
Oh, wow.
That's why we bailed out of jail, to get out to see him.
You don't get that bail back either, right? Like, did you post the 10%?
Yeah, we pleaded no contest, and we the first time they arrested us on the bull, And the marijuana, we paid and bailed out.
Do you know some judges look at no contest as a guilty plea?
Oh, yes. Oh, God, yes.
But if you take it to trial, you have no chance at trial in many regards because they put these people on the trial. They get you to where you can't testify, or they'll convince you not to testify. Or it's crazy. Our system is completely broken. Like, and why would you be in pretrial detention with no bail? You didn't kill anybody. You didn't hurt.
We didn't kill anybody. We
You
didn't
weren't
touch
at flight
him.
risk.
Yeah, bail was our whole bail and pretrial detention needs to be completely
And
different.
how long were you living in the community prior to the arrest?
We lived there for 8 years.
Okay, so you were a good standing member of the community.
Well, there was nobody around us. But
Okay.
people came out and rode horses with the wife
Yeah.
and stuff like that because I had 7 horses. And
All right, let's go with chapter 10. Oh no, I smell smoke. Where did everything go?
well, first of all, between the federal men and the federal men, there was a federal man, and his name was Michael Southern, and he was the one that was screaming, kill him," when we were at the gate. But he was custodian of the property because they seized it. Okay? And after they seized the property, for some way, somehow, they stole everything on it we owned. Tractors, cars, trucks,
The police did that.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything was gone. And they didn't give up at all. And then pretty soon they arsoned the property. Either the federal government arsoned it or the sheriffs. But this is the Krupa thing now. Let me tell you about we couldn't get the letter in the paper, so what I did is I went and bought a rubber stamp that said box holder, because everybody had a post office box. Okay? And I've got a rubber stamp that said box holder. I bought 375 envelopes. We wrote a letter, copied it, put it in there, and stamped in box holder. And I took it in and paid for the doggone to have it mailed. And we got back out of the 300, I think it was 63 or 3 something like that, 360 something. And we got back, in the first week, we had 22 letters from the town. And then we got another 9 or so from the town. And one letter talked about Krupa. And the way it was written, it said, this is all it said on it. I saw James Krupa fondling a young girl inappropriately. No name, no return address, nothing. Well, when we went to the police department to file, and we took it as evidence, and we took about, I think, 19 of the letters with us to the police department when we went to sign the complaint and got arrested. And they stole all that material from us. And that was doggone Hirschman. He was the head captain of the North County Sheriff's Department. And we were in front of him, and there was Lieutenant Honeycutt. And he was in there. Hirschman was in his office. They taped the whole conversation. They did everything. We signed the papers and everything else. Then Keeney come walking in. John Keeney, he come walking in there, and he took me out of the room. We walked out of the room, walked out in the hallway, and he says, "Come with me," and he just walked me down and put me in a jail cell. Within 4 hours, we were accused of 43 marijuana plants, 1.5 to 2 foot tall.
And
That's how that session went, and then we bailed out. Okay?
in chapter 8, you talked about your public defender, and he didn't do everything he could to help you. And then you asked him that after this all happened. He's like, I didn't want to die. Like I like breathing. Like he really, like he was afraid.
He was scared to death of them. They do what they did to us.
Network, huh?
Yeah.
This book is 111 pages.
Right.
How long did it take you to write and put together? And by the way, you wrote it with Linda Brown. Who's that?
That was my youngest daughter. And we'll just forget about her because she's caused more problems than Carter Hasfield. Let me see this book a minute because I want to show him who we contacted, the people that we contacted, and they're in here. They're right here near the end.
How long did it take you to write this book?
2 years.
Okay.
This all occurred back in 1990. And then.
And Mr. Kelch, we're running out of time.
I know. This is the people that we contacted and sent them all letters. What was going on, and they did nothing.
And you try to find an attorney to help, like file a lawsuit against the state.
Yes, and
what happened with
when they put Krupa, I had Krupa on there. I was on my. Had him on the stand, and I come right out and I said, "Okay, James Krupa." I said, "What I want to know is where did you guys find all that marijuana that my wife and I had?" And under oath, he says, "You had no drugs." That was a big mistake he made because within, give or take, about 7 months after that, they arrested him for child molesting.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and put him in jail for 10 years. But
the sheriff that was
James Krupa, the sheriff.
So I guess karma did catch up to him.
on him, without a doubt. And the other thing is he's still alive. And if somebody wanted to talk, and there's quite a few people still living in that town that know about this, and when you go out and talk to them about those two sheriffs, boy, can you get a story out of them. You get a story.
So you finished your probation, everything was okay?
I did the probation.
But you lost your ranch, you lost all your possessions.
Everything. We lost everything.
And what happened after your wife died, or your daughter?
Yeah, my daughter died, and my wife and I, what we did is we moved. When we left jail, we didn't stay in the same place at night, and I lived in my camper shell. Wow. And we stayed in there for about 14 months. And we moved here and moved there. We even came up to June Lake, and we stayed out in the brush here and out in the brush there. And they had quite a few charges against us, a bucket of them. But anyway, I've already sponged them and sponged everything. And
so you never got any lawsuit, or you didn't file a lawsuit, or had anybody?
I filed 14 lawsuits,
and they all got dismissed.
They all got thrown out. This is these judges right here. These 9 judges that are on this piece of paper. These are the ones that disqualified themselves. 6 out of 9 disqualified themselves just because they knew the officers.
Well, Mr. Kelch, we're running out of time.
Okay.
Mark is going to zoom in on you, and you have the final say. Anything that we left out, you probably want to bring it up.
Okay.
And how people could get a copy of your book.
It's in the back of the...
Look right in the camera.
Oh, okay.
Camera right
there. You can get a copy of the book, and you have to buy it through the... it's in the book, and maybe you can read it for me. It's right up in the front. I don't like the people that printed the book. I think they were lousier.
Publishing?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, this publishing company is Page Publishing Company. You have to contact them, and they will send you a book. And they got 2 phone numbers here, and I'll read one of the phone numbers. And this one here, okay, 979-888-654.
Oh, I think that's the book number.
Yeah, it might have. That might be the book.
on Amazon.
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, it's on. It
Okay.
should be out everywhere,
Okay.
and they can buy it. But nobody's handling it. I did leave one of these books in Bishop at the bookstore in Bishop, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you this one.
I just saw. Yeah, it is on Amazon, and it looks like a crazy story of corruption and injustice. And
is.
it's sad that there aren't lawyers that will take the ACLU or there's the Innocent Project, Rocky Mountain Innocent Project, or something that would come and help somebody like
yeah. They wouldn't lift a finger. They wouldn't do anything. I don't know if they were scared to death. I'm going to just say one thing that really surprised me, and really surprised me. But this list, this mess that's right here is everybody that I just kept a list all the time that was involved in this. But there was 2 men in the sheriff's department that hired these 2 men before I bought the property, and they were brothers. And they were hitmen for the sheriff's department. And I've got...
The department had hitmen.
Yeah, 2 of them. And there was even a third one because I had a guy 2 years ago tell me, well, you don't have such and such name down. And anyway.
Make it quick, Mr. Kelch.
Yeah. And anyway, I got a feeling how Webb Bernhardt bought his ranch and they killed the son, and then they lost the property and everything else. And he ended up with a pile of money because the guy was a drug trafficker, money man. And the cops got rid of him and took the money.
Well, Mr. Kelch, we really appreciate you coming on the program to tell your story. Mike, thanks for coming on. Yeah. Folks, that's David Kelch discussing the corruption in his book, See Something, Say Something, about the law enforcement sheriff's department in California. This is Steve Sanson and Michael McDonald with Veterans in Politics. Until next time.